Hello everybody, Bobby Bama here. Just wanted to come to you and apologize for being late with the training module number 2. My real job and life kind of got in the way over the last few days, causing me to be delayed in getting to the module. But we're here now and let's get started. Alright, Bobby Bama Brigade training module number 2. This title is Understanding Stability. Again, because of my lack of time to study and look over my notes, I'm going to be referring to them pretty often, so I apologize for looking down or looking away from the camera, but it's the best I can do right now. The objective of this module is to understand the concept of civilian stability, why it matters more than short-term survival theatrics, and how spear spreads through emotional contagion and social panic when people lose structure, judgment, and self-command or self-control. Again, the purpose of this module is to understand the civilian stability basics. We're going to be covering stability versus emergency response, emotional contagion, social panic, and hopefully we'll learn why that fear spreads faster than fact. It is one of the most remarkable things to watch a variety of people on YouTube that will absolutely act as if the sky is falling at the least little indication, or their favorite content creator posts something that's neither true nor are you even verified. It's just one of those things that people that have a stability mindset just can't really grasp. I get the idea that things spread faster, falsehoods spread faster than truth, and it's very hard to not become part of the crowd, but you have to really try to avoid that at all costs. Hopefully what we'll learn from this module is that we can identify early indicators of instability and maintain calm, useful presence when others drift towards panic. I think that's probably the one thing that I hope that our members will be recognized for, is that if they find themselves in a situation where panic and everybody else is running amok, that you will take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and have the self-confidence and presence to exercise your calm, thoughtful demeanor and take charge. Just a brief opening statement. The module is not about dramatic survival mythology. It's about the quiet discipline that keeps a person, household, and local community from adding disorder to an already bad situation. Stability is what allows good judgment to survive stress. Without it, people become loud, reactive, rumor-driven, and easy to move. You've seen it so many times demonstrated on TV or even in real life when they're covering riots, how the least little thing can trigger people into action. Okay, stability is the first Stability is the first civilian readiness skill. When people hear the word readiness, many imagine gear, evacuation, or movement of crisis itself. You're going to hear a lot of things that we've repeated earlier, or be repeating things that we talked about to reinforce the lessons from the previous modules, and that'll continue throughout the remaining modules. The movement of crisis itself, that's a narrow view. Most civilians do not fail because they lack an exotic capability. They fail because they become unstable before the real test is even started, or the events have even matured yet. Civilian stability means maintaining order in thought, emotion, routine, communication, and action when life becomes uncertain. A stable person can think while others are reacting. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that play out and how important it is. A stable household can absorb stress without immediately becoming chaotic. A stable local group can slow panic instead of multiplying it. And I think that's one thing that the Bobby Bama Brigade wants to become known for, even if you're just an individual or if you have formed a CRN where, you know, they look at us. And in law enforcement, when we had major catastrophes or disasters and things like that, we always sought out the people that were stable, responsible, calm, and could take instruction and even be helpful to the point of making recommendations. The people that were running around like a chicken with their head cut off, we would ignore them immediately because they would just create more problems than we had time to deal with. Stability matters early, and it's one of those things that you just must absolutely learn to master. It's the condition that makes every other skill unusable. A person who owns equipment but loses judgment is not prepared. A family with supplies but no emotional control is not secure. A group with strong opinions but weak self-command is not an asset. That's so often said in prepared citizens commentaries or lives or whatever. You need to be an asset rather than a liability. And a person who can't maintain themselves, again, is a liability. Stability is a platform underneath everything else. Readiness begins before the emergency. A disciplined civilian does not wait for disorder to appear before they become calm, before they become observant, and before they become useful. They build those habits before they need them. And that's what we were talking about in the last module, the thought process. Think about it. Decide how you need to react. Think about how you need to be prepared. It is one of those things that I wish everybody could experience, and they can if they just apply themselves. But it is something that I do in my professional life and my personal life. I will concentrate on playing through all the scenarios before I go into an investigation and try to be prepared for any reaction that I get, whether it's yes I did it, no I didn't do it, why are you picking on me, all the way down to an absolute breakdown and, you know, a crying, sobbing confession. So being prepared mentally is almost at least equal to being physically prepared. Stability versus emergency response. Emergency response is what you do after an event. Stability is the condition that determines whether you will respond well at all. Emergency response is visible, dramatic, and easy to talk about. Stability is quieter. It shows up in a person. It shows up in how a person manages information, preserves routine, checks facts, controls tone, and avoids becoming another problem for everyone else. In practical terms, emergency response answers questions like, do we shelter? Do we evacuate? Do we call for help? Do we administer aid? Or do we secure the home? Stability answers questions that come even earlier. Are we thinking clearly? Are we exaggerating what's happening? Are we infecting the people around us with fear? Are we abandoning useful routines because stress has entered the room? Again, when chaos rules, nobody's prepared. The public often confuses motion with competence. A frantic person may look active, but activity is not the same thing as stability. Running, posting, shouting, impulsively buying, and forwarding unverified claims can feel productive while making the situation worse. Again, in real life terms, how many times I've been asked at a scene in law enforcement, weren't you going to do something? And the whole time we've been doing something, it just wasn't very obvious to the people that were standing around. A real life world example, hurricane supply rush. The situation before a major storm, stores often empty. First, because every family has calmly calculated its need, but because visible buying changes social behavior. People see carts filling, assume scarcity, and begin buying emotionally rather than rationally. Gas lines, water shortages, then accelerate to fear. The lesson from that is that the stability started before the hurricane ever reached landfall. It began when people copied one another's anxiety. A prepared household moves early, uses a list, and avoids joining the stampede. That's the prepper in us. We know it's coming. We know we may not know when it's coming or where it's coming, but we know it's coming, so we're prepared, and then we know what we need to top off, not resupply the whole pantry. Another example, and we all lived through this, I think, is the toilet paper shortage of the COVID era. During the early months of COVID-19 pandemic, many households bought paper goods and household staples in quantities disconnected from the actual shortage needs. I kind of disagree with that to an extent because we weren't sure what we were going to be getting into. So an extra bit of toilet paper or paper goods or paper plates or whatever was probably not a big deal, but loading up an entire grocery cart, it was probably unnecessary. My mother, who lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area, found herself with the inability to resupply toilet paper and paper goods, and I actually had to buy on Amazon and have it shipped to her house so that she didn't just completely run out. The lesson to that is that social proof is powerful. If people do not use internal discipline, they borrow the emotional state from the crowd. Early indicators of instability. Instability usually announces itself before open panic. The signs are often ordinary and easy to miss unless members have been trained to look for them. Think about today, the concerns about the oil situation in the Straits of Hormuz, and everybody's running around, at least in my area, people are filling it, which is not an unwarranted situation because at least if you buy it at today's prices, it will be cheaper than next week's prices. So there's more to it than just what appears to be like fear buying. But again, do you want to run out and exhaust that money that may or may not be used at a later date? Those are the thought processes that have to be employed when doing that. Rumor outruns verified information. People repeat what they hear before they even ask whether it's true or not. The tone rises, conversations become sharp, dramatic, absolute, or moralized instead of measured. Think of the number of times that you see a post on YouTube about, well, this is the beginning, or here we go. And there's really it may happen, and it may very well come to pass that it's true, but just making such a statement is just, it's almost inflammatory without some basis of making the comment. Routine breaks early. People abandon normal tasks, stop thinking in sequence, and fixate on one alarming input. Small signals are overrated. A photo, a store line, a single post, or one official vehicle becoming proof that something is much larger. Gosh, how many times have we seen that same video of those same tanks on the same train that was being moved for an exercise in the early 2000s, but are being shown and led you to believe that was just yesterday, and Fort Hood has no tanks left. Everything's headed out. Now, that very well may be true, but the videos that I'm referring to, we've all seen, and we all know that those are not current day videos. People begin copying the most anxious person in the room. It's just a natural byproduct. Buying, driving, and posting behavior becomes impulsive rather than deliberate. Authority is either blindly worshipped or instantly rejected. In both cases, thinking has been outsourced. Don't let somebody else think. That's the thing that drives me crazy about what goes on in the world today, is because honestly, it's so much social engineering going on in the news. One of my very long-term employees and I were having a conversation about a reaction that he had to a professional matter that he made a mistake. He blew it. He just let his emotions take over, and he finds himself in a position where he's having to try to fix a problem that he created himself. And on further reflection, he realizes that that's not his normal behavior. But in conversation with him yesterday, it's become very obvious that he's been sitting around watching the news pretty much 24/7, and he's become obsessed, and he's become pissed off about everything in the world and all the things and the frustrations that we all share and we all have, and we all realize that we have absolutely no control over to speak of. And that's just exactly what that comment. He really has become copying the most anxious person in the room, and that's whoever's on the news broadcast. Authority is either blindly worshipped or instantly rejected. As I said, in both cases, thinking has been outsourced. A mature member learns to spot these signs in himself first. The moment a person says everybody is freaking out, he should also ask whether he is starting to borrow that same energy. Absolutely. Emotional contagion. Fear moves person to person. Emotional contagion is the spread of a mood. Through exposure, both people absorb the posture, urgency, and assumptions of those around them. This is not a poetic phrase. It's an unobservable social reality. One person's fear can become five people's fear. Five people's fears become that of a neighborhood interpretation of events. And we've all seen that too. This happens because uncertainty is difficult for most people to hold. When facts are incomplete, many individuals look sideways before they look inward. They take cues from tone, facial expression, pacing, and group behavior. In other words, they do not merely ask what is happening. They also ask, usually without realizing, how are people acting about what is happening. That is another thing, if you don't stop and formulate your own opinions based on what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and there's nothing wrong with once you do that, once you calculate all of the angles, all the things that you're seeing, does it make sense? Is it realistic? And then you formulate an opinion. That's what you're supposed to do in my mind. But just to respond to because your favorite content creator, even if it's me, without having some verification or some personal knowledge or experience, is not a good way to go. This is why a stable member must control more than his words. His tempo matters, his volume matters, the order in which he communicates matter. His emotional self-command becomes part of the environment others are reading. Again, it's like we were talking in the first video, children especially feed off of what adults do. If you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, and then that translates down into children. This one personal thing, and I thought about this when I was writing this. I was a freshman in high school, and it was before class. We were all in the classroom, milling around, talking in our little groups, and all of a sudden, these two or three girls started crying in the room. They were sitting over to the side, and then the next thing you know, like half the classroom is 13, 14-year-old, maybe 15-year-old females. And this isn't a gender thing. This is just how this instance happened. And more girls started joining this little group of people that were crying. And so, naturally, being nosy, myself and 3 or 4 other guys walked over there to see what was going on. We thought somebody maybe had, said something to them, and maybe we needed to get involved. And I remember asking this girl, and I can even remember her name till today, and I asked her, I said, what's happened? And she said, I don't know. And she's squalling like a baby, and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And she said, I don't know. And I said, why are you crying? And she's like, well, they're crying. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That just, when I was writing this, that just came back to me like it was yesterday, and I was probably 14 years old when that happened. And that's exactly how these situations evolve. People see people acting a certain way, and then they feel that they need to act that way. You do not need to be the loudest person in the room. You need to be the steadiest. In uncertain situations, calm is not passivity. Calm is command over your own output. Real world situation. Here again, this is just an example that I've found. At malls, schools, airports, and public events, panic has repeatedly been amplified by partial sounds, misunderstand movement, or social media claims that outran confirmed reporting. In many cases, more people were moved by the rumor and crowd reaction than by direct knowledge. That's how many times have we seen posts that come across, and those of us that have the scanner apps that let you know when a certain amount of people are listening to an event. How many times have we gotten a notice about a active shooter at a military base, at a school, and unfortunately the schools are more often right than not, but malls and all of this. And then if you follow those postings or those scanner things, 30 minutes, an hour into it, they're like, no, there was no active shooter. It was just somebody heard a noise, told somebody, and the panic just spread. It's almost like shouting fire in a theater. That kind of an example. And it again is just one of those things that people just it's natural. It's a natural response, and you have to train against it. Social panic, when the group becomes less rational than an individual. Social panic is what happens when fear stops being personal and becomes collective. People no longer respond only to the original problem, they respond to another's response. This produces escalation. A crowd can move into foolish behavior even when many individuals within it would have acted more sensibly on their own. And that is so true. A disciplined civilian has to resist the pull of that kind of behavior. It will slow your interpretation of what's going on. It will separate what is real from theater or perception. I don't know how many times I've been to a barroom fight or whatever, and you get there and you're asking the questions about what happened, and at the front door you hear one story, and all the way to the end, till you get to the people that were actually involved in the fight, you hear another one, and then somebody else is punching somebody else, and you're like, why'd you do that? Well, I thought he was involved in it. Well, was he? No, I found out he wasn't. So my suggestions or recommendations of what a stable civilian actually should do is they should narrow the problem. They should define what is known, what is unknown, and what actions are actually required at the time. They should reduce input. They should not tend to let 10 feeds, 3 rumors, and 5 emotional personalities dictate their thinking. You have to be in charge if you're going to be in charge. They preserve useful routine. They keep people fed, hydrated, informed, and occupied with what's the next necessary task. Information is power, and it can be misused or it can be used to an absolute positive end, which is what I hope we would all do. Remember to communicate in sequence. First, communicate what's happening. If you know what's happening. If you don't know what's happening, there is absolutely nothing wrong with telling somebody, I don't know. Now, when law enforcement is involved, they believe that you're omnipotent. They think you know everything before anybody else knows anything. And sometimes that's true. But most of the time when a law enforcement officer arrives on a scene or a disaster, or anybody, whether it be law enforcement or you as a neighbor or a friend or whatever, until you know what's happening, you don't know what's happening. You have to refuse the emotional theatrics. You don't need to posture. You don't need to speculate for attention or treat every stressor like it's the end of the world. That's that little boy that cried wolf kind of. Why stability matters more than survival. The word survival is often misused. In popular culture, it suggests that final dramatic contest, a collapse, a firefight, a wilderness episode, or a singular task of toughness. That frame is attractive because it feels urgent and cinematic, and that's how we're used to seeing our crises. They play out on TV in real life. They play out on the evening news. They play out on cell phone video that's captured. But how many times, and again, I will ask and try to help everybody understand, get the full facts. Look at the videotapes from all of these police shootings, the ICE situation, the ICE arrest, the protest, and when it's all said and done, now not always, we know that, but most times that video has either been edited or it didn't start until after the initial event that caused the reaction has already passed. And, nobody stops to think, well, what happened before the camera came on? What happened before the recorder started? Everybody just assumes, because as soon as that camera came on, that it had to have happened just then. Well, something had to have gotten somebody's attention, unless they're standing there constantly videoing or recording. So we're all accustomed to that. Most people will never face the fantasy scenarios they rehearse in their head, and that's absolutely right. What they will face are periods of uncertainty, disrupted routine, information overload, financial stress, severe weather, social pressures, and community anxieties. That is most people's SHTO. A tornado, a hurricane, a fire, a wildfire, a horrible accident. I mean, just any of those things before, we have a red dawn scenario. The unstable person magnifies trouble. And basically what I'm hoping to get across here is to not, number one, learn how not to be that person. Number two, learn to be the stable and voice of reason in terrible situations, and not to be that person that magnifies. And it's easy, I know. It would have been so easy to have given into that situation in many instances in my life, professionally and personally, but it just causes more trouble, and then eventually somebody's going to look back and go, well, who said that? Well, Bobby Bama said it. Then everybody's going to become to you going, why did you say that? It's just easier to avoid that kind of problem. Again, the unstable person magnifies trouble. He startles early, talks too much, posts too fast, buys too emotionally, and infects people around him with the same disorder. And it doesn't have to be him or her. Any of us are capable of doing that. They burn energy, they burn trust and options. By the time a real decision must be made, the person is already known to have weakened himself because of these actions. The stable person does something less glamorous and far more valuable. He keeps order. He thinks his sequence. They separate appearance from reality. They protect the household from fear-driven behavior, and they become the point of reference that others can lean on. And if not everybody wants to do that, and if you don't want to do that, nobody's going to force you to be the leader. But that doesn't mean you can't be the voice of reason. We all know and have friends that are that one person that after, something goes on in your little group, say your neighbors, people you get together and play cards with once a week, or have a fire pit gathering. Something gets started, something gets said, somebody said something about another neighbor in another neighborhood, and it goes on from there. And we all have that one person that people will walk up to and go, what the hell's going on? And that one person can clearly and concisely go, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. And do you know why they said it? Don't know. So there's always that one person in your group, your church, your family. And I would encourage you to become that person if you can, if it's in your personality to do so, because there's a lot of value to that. And it is not only personally valuable that you maintain the sense of calm and dignity, I guess, keep your shit together. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to say that. But anyway, that's why stability matters more than survival language. Survival is an outcome people talk about. Stability is the condition that makes outcomes possible. A household that stays stable, buys better, moves better, communicates better, sleeps better, and recovers better is all around better. A community with even a small number of stable people is harder to panic and easier to guide. And that's the truth. If you have hot heads in your group, you need to get rid of them. or you need to learn how to deal with them, because tigers don't change their stripes. For a civilian, the question is not merely could I survive something extreme. The better question is, do I add order to or disorder when pressure arrives, and that will shape everything from there on. Basically, the bottom line is that survival talks often start at the end of the story. Stability starts at the beginning. If you want to be useful in a real crisis, be the kind of person who does not spread panic. I would encourage each and every one of you to give this some consideration. Think about it and decide whether or not what kind of person you want to be. You know, some people just can't help but be reactionary. It's just part of their DNA. They don't mean to be that way. It's just some people just can't help it. Then there's some people that thrive on it. It's like again, a personal reflection. My sister would rather start something than to just leave it alone. She wants to argue. She wants to be the, and and it's just something that I did it when I was younger. I think we all do things that we wouldn't do today. 20 years ago, I'm not the same person that's sitting here. I was a lot more reactionary. I was a lot more, got to get in your face kind of thing. But I at least felt like I had a legitimate reason to do that. I wasn't just angered or brought to the point of confrontation for no reason at all. But calmer heads prevailing. You sleep a lot better at night. You don't have to go back and apologize as many times as I did in the past, going, sorry, kind of lost my cool. So it's vital that I think we all learn these things. That'll do it, really. The things that I hope that we will take from this, and hopefully we'll have some discussion on it. I don't know whether I'll do the question and answer tonight. Depending on how many people have an opportunity to do this, we may do it one day next week. Everybody in the Discord, just let me know what their preferences would be. But some of the questions I hope we can answer or talk about are what are the earliest indicators that a person, a household, or a group is becoming unstable. You also need to think about this. If the worst case scenario were to happen, and if SHTF has gotten full blown, you need to watch your neighbors. You need to watch your neighborhoods. You need to watch the surrounding. You'll sense the stress and the strain and the instability growing, and you need to be prepared for it. You don't need to be caught off guard by it. You need to watch for it and be ready for it and know what to do. Why do people panic in certain situations before the facts are clear? How the emotional contagion in everyday civilian settings, not just in major disasters, happen, and what are the differences between being active and being useful. So those are some of the things that I hope we can discuss in the question and answer. Look forward to when we do it, everybody having some input, having some questions, having their own thoughts on this, and let me know what you think about the module, whether it's useful, whether it's just a repetitious something that you already know or whatever. But I think until we think about these things, they need to be brought to the forefront and need to be thought of. All right, guys, that'll do it. I appreciate everybody's attention. Hope everybody enjoyed this. Look forward to your comments in the Discord, and we'll talk soon. Everybody stay safe. Thanks.